I would like to announce that a quorum is present, the meeting is duly called, and a notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is 6 p.m. The following board members in attendance: Allison Lasan, Michelle Akateb, Dr. Stacy Barker, Dr. Sheila Taylor, Madison Lopez, and Jenny Prosnick. I've asked board member Sheila Taylor to lead us in prayer.
Please bow with me. Dear Father God, we come to you with a spirit of thanksgiving, thanking you for this amazing district served by one capable superintendent, served by amazing administration, terrific teachers, and superb staff. Father God, we thank you for every student and for every parent that entrusts us with their students so that we can educate them, Lord. We ask that in everything we do, you remind us that education should be the goal, first and foremost. Thank you, Father, for blessing us, for allowing us to have a great Thanksgiving with our family, our friends, and our loved ones. Also praying for those that didn't have for Thanksgiving, dear Lord. Lord, I ask that when we come together tonight to do the important work of this district, that you give us a spirit of kindness, a spirit of working together, a spirit of grace, Father, the same grace that you give us every day. All these things we pray and ask in your holy Son's name. Amen.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, God, one and indivisible. I've asked board member Madison Lopez to share our mission and vision statements.
LISD's mission statement is engaging and inspiring learners and leaders, and it is our vision statement that all students are confident, equipped with the knowledge and skills to thrive and adapt for their future.
Thank you. Public comments are next on the agenda, and we have no speakers tonight. So we will move on to discussion items. The superintendent report, Dr. Rapp, facility and program location updates.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight we're going to follow up on some conversation that we had back in August about facility and program moves. As you all declared, 2 additional properties surplus in the Learning Center and the Student Success Center. And we know that both of those properties are homes to important programs, and so we'll talk about where those programs could go with those properties being declared surplus. First, I wanted to just start off with our 4 cornerstones that we're guided by, and that our core belief is that continuous improvement informs and inspires future growth, and that we are constantly adapting to build and sustain our district for the future as we look ahead to the next decade. Of course, we heard from Rocky Gardner at last month's board meeting about our enrollment forecast, and that we are continued to expect it to decline over the next several years. So August 11th, you all declared 6 properties as surplus. 4 of those were school retirement campuses, plus the Student Success Center and the Learning Center. At that time, I issued a community-wide communication as we work to keep our community updated. And you see on the screen there a couple of points from that communication that Highland Village Elementary would continue to be district-owned and would be repurposed for other LISD programs, and that's what we'll discuss this evening. So it said also in that communication, the board will determine by December which programs will be placed at the Highland Village location and other below capacity facilities in the district. Downing Middle School families were also provided a communication update after that August 11th board meeting, as the board had taken a pause on bond project work at Downing Middle School, and we shared with Downing parents that we would re-communicate with them about a new timeline for picking back up the Downing bond projects as we look to utilize space in facilities that had existing capacity. So we held charrettes with staff from a variety of programs to get input about program needs considering location moves. I appreciate Ms. Litchfield and the school chiefs for holding those staff input charrettes. We held them with the LLC staff, the Knight High School staff, school-age parent program staff, the VLA staff, our team staff, and our DAEP staff. One of the things that we also have to consider as we discuss tonight, where could we house programs, is the impact to students and families when, as a district our size, we centralize things in one location. For example, students from the Colony and the Hebron feeders accessing programs at the Student Success Center or the Learning Center can be challenging. As we know, Business 121 is only way more congested than it was when these decisions were first made. We do not provide busing for students assigned to DAEP, and as we know, as we've taken transportation in-house, we've been working to address that consistently. So busing considerations for any programs outside of DAEP that are needed for students from these feeders to attend if programs are housed in the Lewisville feeder geographic area would have to be something you would think about if you continue to centralize any of the programs. And then another consideration is just any impact to law enforcement with any of these programs, as your location of DAEP or any other behavior program can sometimes cause you to have to engage with the community from a law enforcement perspective. We also know that changes to DAEP from the last legislative session from House Bill 6 now allow changes to K through 2 students being put in out-of-school suspension if their conduct threatens the immediate health and safety of other students or is a documented repeated or significant disruption. And so that we know that that could potentially grow the numbers of students that we're seeing in our elementary DAEP programs. And so one of the things that, as we've been thinking about program location moves, is how do we ensure that we're considering how do we provide strong elementary instruction along with behavior education for students in grades K through 5, not just 3 through 5, with House Bill 6 being law. So the other thing is I shared at the outset that we heard from Rocky about our enrollment continuing to decline over the next several years. Our current enrollment is 46,300. By 2029, we anticipate 43,000 students, and by 2035 could be on the low end, 42,000 students. So we definitely know that facilities will continue to have excess capacity as our graduating classes of seniors are larger than our incoming classes of kinder. So our proposed program moves that we bring before you this evening, I'm going to start first with Virtual Learning Academy. Virtual Learning Academy is housed currently at our Learning Center location. There is available space in Downing Middle School. You see that Downing's current enrollment is 607. Their max capacity is over 1,000 students. When you adjust their capacity currently for any special programs that they have, their adjusted capacity is 865. Their future forecasted enrollment by 2031 is 599. So with the space in that building, we would propose allowing the operations for VLA to happen out of Downing Middle School. Students that need to be transported would transport themselves to any testing they need to take or anything like that, just like they do now with the operations being out of the Learning Center. Then the other change that we're proposing in these program moves is to establish a DAEP and an accelerated credit program on the east side of the district. These programs have all been housed in one location, either currently at the Student Success Center or the Learning Center. So we would establish east side programming. We propose Lakeview to be the home for middle school DAEP and middle school accelerated programs. And we're also proposing that at Lakeview we create a pre-collegiate academy. You can see there the current enrollment of Lakeview at 331 students. They have well over 1,000 student capacity, and their current adjusted capacity is 970. We know that with the Colony being the collegiate academy program, that we could work to ensure that students are started to provide supports for that program in middle school. The Colony High School would be our proposed location for high school DAEP and high school accelerated programs, and you see the excess capacity we anticipate having at the Colony High School. And then Kamey Elementary would be the home for the elementary DAEP program, and you see the space that we would have available at Kamey. We would need to provide additional staff as necessary at these locations to oversee these programs, along with determine how we're going to staff the oversight of these programs at the district level. Just like with Gifted and Talented, for instance, you have district oversight of that program, even though the program is fanned out to and served in every single campus. The other thing about this change in programming is that it groups together programs by level. So all middle school needs are grouped together, high school needs are grouped together, and then elementary is pulled out from high school and middle school. And currently, DAEP is K through 12 at that one location, and then the accelerated program is all at one location for middle and high school students at the Learning Center. So the proposed program moves then on the central and west side of the district. DeLay would be the proposed location for the middle school programs to serve the LHS, Flower Mound, and Marcus feeders. You see the capacity there. DeLay can hold over 1,000 students. Even adjusted, it can hold over 1,000 students. Its current enrollment is 625. We would need to decide between Harmon or Kilo for the high school DAEP and the high school accelerated programs, and then the night high school operations. So we need to spend some time with Ms. Gore and Ms. Flanders about their campus footprints and really taking a look at what makes sense and come back to you with recommendations between those two schools. And then Old Settlers would be the space for elementary DAEP. That is a very large elementary building that we have in our inventory with well over 1,000 student capacity, and its current enrollment is sitting just under 500 students. Our proposal around teams and the school age parent program would be to place those programs in the Highland Village Elementary facility. So explore, and we would have an opportunity to explore additional space opportunities that could allow for partnerships with a contract provider for meeting additional student needs. So we would propose that teams operate out of a certain portion of the building, and that if a possibility opens up with a contract provider for operating a contract program for the school district that would meet specific needs of our special education learners, and Ms. Clark and Ms. Litchfield are exploring that currently, that would give us an opportunity to support our campuses across the district even further, as our self-contained classrooms, for instance, are seeing behaviors that are more intensive but are not at the level of the teams support that we provide. Some of the feedback from the staff at teams about space needs I included for you in this presentation. You can see there's a lot of considerations around how can they spread out with some more classrooms, some more space, to be able to have some sensory rooms, even an outdoor learning area, spaces for psychologists, reading specialists, any itinerant staff that are needed as they come through that location to support the needs of our students. We're very proud of what is done in our TEAMS program. And we know that we serve as a model for many other districts who come to us to look at what we have set up with teams. So them having access to this space, not only could it be a standard for all districts in the Metroplex with how we set this up, but again, it could open up some new opportunities for support as we have more space in that building. So our next steps, I did meet with the principals who oversee campuses that are potentially impacted by these proposals this evening. And our principals were able to communicate with staff, letting staff know that this conversation was happening tonight. They were able to share that communication today. So our next step would be to communicate to the community based on the conversation that you all have tonight and any other feedback that you provide. We would propose to send out a community-wide communication, maybe as early as later tomorrow afternoon. finalize campus spaces at each facility that would be used, because I need to work with Mr. Veit and construction on any potential construction needs at these schools. We were talking about that today even. And we would need to finalize a timeline for those construction needs and bringing any of that before you, because you all would have to approve any of that spend on any construction. And then we would need to communicate specifically with the Downing Middle School community about picking up their bond project timeline. The first, of course, that life cycle maintenance and repair work is 2 summers worth of work. And so Mr. Veit was sharing with me today again that they could begin summer of 27 and summer of 28 for picking up the 20-year work for Downing Middle School. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Madam President, for any feedback or questions.
Dr. Barker?
Thank you, Madam President. My first question, I love the idea of East Side and West Side DAEP, especially now that we're going to be splitting out elementary from our upper grade levels. And you had mentioned the impact on our law enforcement. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is kind of a validation question. So this proposal would spread it out over 3 municipalities? Would it be the Colony, Lewisville, and Flower Mound? Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So rather than it all being on Lewisville,
Right.
we'd
Like
spread
is
it out
now.
over 3 municipalities. My other question has to do with the pre-collegiate academy, which so excited about. I think that's a great idea. This would be a choice application program like our STEM academies, yes?
Yes, it would be a choice program for sure. STEM academies, you just indicate your interest. There's really not an application of sorts, but for the Colony Collegiate Academy, there is a process to go through. So we would need to work through those kind of details. Would you have to fill out an application, or would it simply be you express interest and we go by the timeline of interest that you've expressed?
Okay.
Yeah.
My other question has to do with specialized oversight. Do you feel like this needs its own specialized oversight? The reason I ask is, we've had common oversight over STEM academies, but there are a lot of those in the district, right? So you have a team managing that. This would be a more singular program. So are you anticipating some very specialized oversight for that academy? What are you thinking?
Oh, yes. Okay, we're back on the academy. Thank you.
Sorry, Collegiate Academy.
Yes. I haven't had a chance to really finalize that with Ms. Upshaw, but I do believe that the support that we get from Ms. Adams in counseling and social work with the Collegiate Academy, along with Ms. Upshaw and along with the Lakeview Middle School principal, and we'll bring that recommendation forward at the regular meeting. I think they could oversee the program. I don't think it would require any additional staff at the district level.
Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam President. My question was related to, I think it was delay in the moving of a food pantry from, was it LLC? Remind me, do they have a food pantry as it stands?
They have Harvey's Haven,
Okay.
yes, which is an opportunity. It functions somewhat like a grocery store,
Okay.
shopping type of experience.
Okay.
They
Is
have
this an
inside the building.
addition, or it just would combine, or?
We would look at, could we combine?
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
the resources together. And we'd have to work with our community partners with that food bank to see if that's an option,
Okay.
if this is a path that you all desire.
And then we feel like there's enough room, based on the capacity that you mentioned, to move that pantry?
Yes,
Okay.
we do think there's enough capacity to do that. One of the things we would do, soon after this meeting and feedback tonight is we'd really start mapping out spaces inside of these buildings.
Okay.
Where would things go? One of the things we'd have to consider, in meeting with the principals, Mr. Gray brought this up, the cafeteria, for instance, is of possible concern at delay, right? So it may not be classroom spaces, it may be other types of spaces that could be impacted by these programs. We'd have to think through.
Gotcha. And then my last question was related to, you had mentioned information going out to the community. Is there any type of community feedback that's going to be requested? Would anybody be able, I guess, to weigh in on some of the decisions that we might make? I'm just asking.
I don't have that in the draft communication at this time, but we could work that in there if so desired.
And I'm only asking that, I realize Highland Village is, can be a little different, but they have specifically had lots of questions about, what's going to happen to that building, and if we're going to send that communication out, of course, it needs to go to the community, but maybe there's a space where they get to weigh in, or they get to have some type of feedback, and, and maybe we, I don't know, use that or decide whatever we're going to do with it, but I think it would be a good idea from a transparency standpoint.
Ms. Lasan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so currently, DAP and teams obviously are in the same building, and they're overseen by Mr. Drew back there. And so, we've already had talked about that DAP would probably need, are you talking the district oversight, right? So are we talking about DAP and teams with district oversight, or would you kind of split off DAP and have that over here, and then would teams just go under special ed? Or how would they still be together? How do you foresee that oversight?
Some of those kind of conversations we would have with Dr. Deaton and Mr. True on the outcome of this conversation this evening. I think we already actually have follow-up meetings scheduled with them soon. I'm looking at Mr. True. Yes, he's shaking his head. Because we really would like to think through with the two of them that have been overseeing these programs, what do they think in terms of oversight for the programs, based on them being, some of them being now in multiple locations. Teams being at one location would need specific oversight at that building. And then you need to think through what's the level of the district oversight along with that building oversight. But we would definitely have those conversations in collaboration with Mr. True and Dr. Deaton, who've been doing a great job of leading these programs. And I know, all of you are shaking your head. They are great leaders. We're very proud of the work that happens at these two facilities already. And I know it's a different approach, what we're proposing, and that's going to be an adjustment for the staff as we have multiples of these locations operating, but I'm confident that with Mr. True and Dr. Deaton's input, we can recommend what the best oversight approach is. Yeah.
And to that point, another thing I was going to say is that I realize this is affecting staff. Some of these kids, the kids that are in DAP generally are not there for very long. So we're not talking about, and hopefully the same thing with teams. They're not there for very long. But the staff, that's their job. And so we do, again, I guess say that we feel for that there might be some angst with all of this, but know that, that it's going to be fine, and we just appreciate them being flexible. I feel like we've been saying that since the dreaded COVID, but, but it's true. But I think this is going to just make us better and know that they're valued and their opinions are valued, and that, we need every single one of them. So that's more of a comment, not a question. And then I guess the last thing I was going to say is about, we have always been, such a, I think, a leader in the realm of special ed for, for kids. And I saw Mrs. Clark. There she is. I saw you walk in. And so, I hope that, people will look at, what we're going to do here with teams as something positive, because, I feel like we've kind of been stuck, and I know that the district kind of feels that way too for the past couple of years with the way things have been going. And I really am looking forward to see what kind of innovative things that we can come up with and do with teams, with behaviors. I actually think, and I live in Highland Village. That is my community. I've lived there for 20 years. I love special ed. I love the kids, and I'm excited for this opportunity for our community to see what we can do there and really make some differences in the lives of these kids. So there you go.
I appreciate that. I think to that point, the ability to have additional space beyond what we have right now for teams, and then being able to think about how do we create some new programs that we don't currently have, whether we can partner with a contract provider or we do them on our own. There is no doubt that, as I said, the needs of our students are increasing on campuses and in classrooms, and having additional space gives us the opportunity for some growth to support our campuses and our families, and I think it's exciting.
Ms. Lopez.
I have a few quick questions, and apologies if things have already been, answered, and I'm just going over things that I need to be made aware of. But first, I just want to echo what Dr. Taylor said and completely agree that community feedback is very important, and want to make sure that those school campuses, the school communities that are going to be taking on that burden of additional student populations are just asked general feedback, how they feel about that, how they feel that their communities are going to handle that. And I would love to see the feedback that was received from staff members. If that's already been made available, I would love to see that personally. And I'm curious about security at these campuses. Have we conducted some type of, security assessment at these campuses? Specific for the campuses that would be taking on the load of the DAP programs. I guess maybe I'd love to see a cost-benefit analysis or something for the ongoing security and staffing at those specific campuses that are taking on the DAP load. Yeah.
So part of what we'll have to do whenever it comes time to look at construction needs is ensure that the campuses where we need to create separation from existing students with possibly like DAP and accelerated students, that would be part of what we would need to bring forward to you all, is what would the construction entail to make any adjustments. Of course, we have good security at all of our schools. The main thing is going to just be ensuring that we are identifying access to the building in a way that makes it easy for students accessing those programs to access the building, and also keeps them separate from existing students accessing the building. So when we looked at the building footprints as a part of this proposal, we were looking for areas where we could create that separation, and that it easily existed, or that we knew we could identify it because of the excess capacity that the facilities are going to have. Yeah. There, is definitely no doubt that, as we talked about with the enrollment, that the fewer campuses that we maintain overall, which is why the ability to maintain Highland Village in the inventory, allowing the board to declare 2 additional properties as surplus properties, is going to generate additional opportunities for the district in terms of revenue, depending on what is done with those buildings, outright sell or lease potentially. So you are definitely being able to take advantage of excess space as your enrollment declines. You're able to put additional facilities on the market in order to generate revenue for the school district.
One more question. Have we considered like a phasing process? So would all of these changes happen from one school year to the next, or would there be a process of rolling these out?
So the soonest any of the changes could begin would be this coming August. Part of the construction timeline would impact the overall moves from the buildings. With Highland Village Elementary being available to move into, that is probably going to be a move that's more easily able to happen quickly, whereas depending on what construction is necessary, that may cause obviously some phase-in approaches as we consider moving accelerated and DAEP. So that we would need to come forward, but that would be associated with the construction timelines on the impact to the moving and the phasing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Alcatab?
My questions have pretty much been answered. I was piggybacking off of Dr. Barker, and then Ms. Lassant also asked it, but it sounds like there's conversations to be had in regards to teams and DAEP and the oversight from the district standpoint and what that would look like. And so I'd be interested to get that feedback and definitely receive their input, because it is definitely very valued, as they do run fantastic programs. I do like the idea of teams moving into Highland Village Elementary, giving them in a space that is definitely much needed and many growth opportunities. It is a beautiful building with a lot of opportunities. And one of the things that we always say, it's the LASD way, And this allows us to create something, the LASD way, that can be imitated and replicated across other areas. And so I think that that is beautiful, and anxious to hear the feedback in regards from the staff and SPED and how that would look. And then also I do like the idea of separating the DAEP with elementary, middle, and high, keeping them centralized in their zones and what that would look like, because I think that that is something that we haven't done, and I think that that would be very valuable to those communities. I think it would also be important to those parents, because I know some parents who I've spoken to who have a child going into DAP in their elementary, and now they're going into where other high schoolers are sitting. This is definitely a better opportunity to be sure that we are ensuring the safety of our students and making sure that they're getting the resources that they need. So I definitely appreciate that.
Dr. Taylor.
Sorry for doubling back. First of all, I forgot to say thank you for always bringing great ideas forward and thinking outside of the box as we look at a declining enrollment and all the information we receive, and trying to consolidate is the word I like to use, the district, so that we can provide better services to our students and not have things so spread out among many. I just want to thank you for that. Also, my question was related to the high school DAEP at Harmon or Kilo. Am I understanding correctly that you're going to have a conversation with both principals and come back with one thing for us to look at? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and Ms. Gore, I see her over there too. But yes, have a conversation with Ms. Gore and Ms. Flanders, and taking a look at their building footprints along with potential construction that's already going to happen. That was one of the things we were even talking about, was being sure that if we recommend Kilo, for instance, that's up for construction, that we do that ahead of any construction happening, and those conversations are going on right now. But Ms. Gore and Ms. Flanders were both great about coming back around these conversations to see which building should be the final recommendation. Yes, I will on that one. And I appreciate the thanks. I was going to say the same to all of you. I appreciate you all being so proactive in wanting to hear the solutions about how to ensure that we are making the best use of space, because as you look 10 years out, we definitely will continue to face that we have excess space that we do not need. So if we don't start making plans now, then we miss an important window of opportunity. So thank you all for that as well.
I will sound like a bit of a broken record like I did last year, which was the closing of those 5 elementary schools had everything to do about the facilities themselves and the size of those facilities. It had absolutely nothing to do with what went on inside of those buildings. What went on inside those buildings was excellent work, and that excellent work continues on across all 64 of our campuses. You had touched on it briefly, and I know I asked you so you could do the math on it. What is the size difference between Highland Village Elementary and the current Student Success Center for the teams portion?
Yeah, so overall square footage, the Student Success Center is about 35,000 square feet. And basically that building is 2 hallways. So you can picture about half of that right now is dedicated to teams. It may not work out exactly that way if you've added the specific classrooms, but roughly. So, about half of that 35,000 teams, about half DAEP. Highland Village has 63,000 square feet available in it. So, and we definitely know one of the challenges we have faced while the construction of the Student Success Center was great, the staff have done a great job, it's definitely tight on space over there. So,
It's never been big enough.
Yeah.
Since I've been on the board. It's just never been able to use, I believe, in the capacity that it needs to be used to benefit those students. I don't think a board member who's ever toured the Student Success Center would say that there was enough room for teams. And I also greatly support DAP being done not only geographically in different zones, but also by level, because I also think it is an opportunity for some of the some of the feedback that we have heard sometimes, especially, is that it's not as robust of an educational experience. And I think that if it's on a campus where some of those resources are sometimes just down the hallway for some of those teachers, et cetera, I think that that would be greatly beneficial. When we had talked about physical barriers at where we have the DAP program. And you talked about Randy coming back on that. So my question is, when will we hear from Randy?
Yeah, so the hope, and Randy was going to look at the timeline today, could we bring forward a CMAR as soon as January? We may or may not be able to, just depending on timeline for RFP, bidding, that kind of thing. But if not, then our goal would be February, that we'd go ahead and select the CMAR. We need to get them on board so that we can start working up options with that expertise on what changes need to be made to the building.
I'm not worried about Highland Village, as you said, it's vacant right now. We could start work not next week, obviously, we have a process.
Right,
but,
right.
But that could start in March, if you will, if we needed to. I'm more concerned about the capacity of construction firms over the summer, because that's when they're really seem to be very tapped out. So that's my only, cross my fingers and toes on. And
Right.
I do want to say thank you to the Downing community. I know that they were a little frustrated with us when we held off on doing their work on their campus as we looked at our capacity. And so I want to thank them for their patience as we look not only at one campus. I understand you're at Downing, you care about Downing, but if you're on this board, you have to care about all 64 campuses, and you have to care about how each one impacts the other. And so I want to thank that community for having a little bit of patience with us as we put a pause on it. I think that the VLA program there would be a great added benefit. I also want to say we don't need, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty positive I'm correct, we don't need all the capacity for DAEP or at any of these campuses. We don't need 200 seats for DAEP, for example, at Kamey Elementary. That's not what we're looking at doing.
Right, that is correct. We need just a little bit of the excess capacity. And of course, the consideration that we had to give to Downing, Lakeview, and DeLay was they were originally, a year ago, last fall, identified for potential closure. So you're talking about schools that really the question, right, that you all asked was, well, could we do something different with the space that's available in these schools? And so I think that from a community perspective, we'll definitely walk away and consider how do we go about getting feedback. I'll share the draft comms with you all this evening after the meeting of what they currently look like right now. While they may have concerns about how is this going to work if you place the programs there, what we definitely know is nobody wants to receive that communication that says your school is next up for retirement. So I think that's not something everybody may understand, and so that I don't have that in the communication, but this is definitely a way to try to address that concern moving forward. So.
I personally just will say I think it's a benefit to the entire district all the way around. So thank you so much, Dr. Rapp. Next up is the Student Services Report. Mr. Kaj, it's the transportation update.
Dr. Rapp, President Prosnick Board, thank you for letting us come and give another update about the busing in LISD. As always, we start out with some busing by the numbers. A couple of numbers there that we'll you'll see each time. The number of routes established in the shuttles, those are pretty static until we are able to dive into, and maybe in the in the spring, start looking at hazardous routes or things that are improving in our area. A couple of other points to remember or to know, we have 10 LSD Suburbans to be used for smaller trips. Those are usually with school-sponsored trips, smaller athletic events. Then we also have 10 White Fleet vehicles used for student delivery as well. 75 LASD coach drivers, keeping in mind that we have 375 coaches. So 75 coaches are driving, and we even have 2 that have come out of retirement to drive for us too. So very exciting. Lisa?
Dr. Rapp and Board, good evening. So as of November 21st, I'm smiling today because I'm excited. We have not enough bus drivers just yet, but right now we're sitting at 190. Our fleet manager has hired an additional maintenance individual, so we're at 6. We have future drivers, 3. Bus monitors, we're sitting at 67 out of 77. Office staff, we're at 27 out of 31, and White Fleet drivers, as of today, we have 5 out of 10. Also, we have 2 new operations managers. One started the week prior to the Thanksgiving break. One starts on Wednesday. And we have a safety and training manager. He also starts on Wednesday, so excited about that. Okay, so next, our staffing efficiencies. Again, we have 5 new drivers who have been assigned to the East Zone, the Colony Zone, with several having completed the key steps, which is onboarding, ride-alongs, orientation. 3 new drivers were added to Mill Street, and 1 new driver added to Purnell. We have 3 driver trainees that have advanced in their licensing program, with test dates now being scheduled. We have 2 that are scheduled for this Thursday, as well as 1 for the following week. And I'm fairly certain all 3 will pass. Our standard operating procedures continue to be developed and refined. Drafts are now in review with the goal of improving consistency and equitable practices across the board for all drivers and monitors. Parent communication enhancements have also shown measurable progress. The improved notification process has reduced the incoming call volume. I can say that our call center calls have decreased since we've transitioned, which I'll talk about shortly with the Stop Finder app. On a given afternoon, I can say between maybe 3 and 5. Some days we may receive anywhere from 8 to 10 calls. So overall, while work continues, we're seeing steady and meaningful progress. There's hope. So open routes, and what this is across the board for all 3 bus barns. We have the Colony with 5 open routes. Mill Street has 2 open routes, and the Purnell location now has 6 open routes. And if you compare that to, that's November, but if you compare it to October, we're getting there. So our absences, this is what really hurts us. And it's really hard for the community and staff to understand what the process looks like for us on a daily basis. So over a 3-week period in November, if you look at Monday, the 3rd of November, we had 13 absences across all 3 locations. And what that looks like, if I have a route, Mr. Kosh has a route, and I'm asked to cover his route because he's absent, I have to pick up my elementary students, my middle school students, or high school students. So it just creates a logistical nightmare, which is not good for our students, our parents, or community, or the schools. So as you can see, it's on the 7th, and I believe, at the 7th? Yes. Sorry, that's kind of small.
Friday.
Yes, Friday was really rough. you'll see that's 15 or 16 absences. So again, that's 16 drivers that are out with elementary routes, high school routes, middle school routes. Major impact for us. And it fluctuates if you look between Mondays through Fridays. With Purnell having the most absences, that's our largest location, but we do have a lot of staff that are out on sick leave, medical leave, which are returning soon within the next week. Mill Street, 35 absences, and the Colony, 35 absences. Not working? So for the sake of time, I've learned to improvise as a transportation employee. So next up, we'll talk about the Stop Finder app. I know everyone's excited about that. As we all know, December 31st, our contract with Here Comes the Bus app will be over. Maybe a surprise day. So as of today, we've sent out 40,487 invites to all of the parents across all 64 schools, those that are riding the bus, and we're at about a 13% of parents that have activated their accounts. Yay. That's good. Yes. And do know that the transportation staff, they are being trained weekly on the Stop Finder app, trying to work through the calls that we could potentially see. So if you have any issues, let us know. Yes, ma'am. Okay. But the most common issue thus far is parents not receiving their invites, which the staff is equipped in sending those invites instantly if a parent calls in or if we receive the emails from a parent. Oh, I'm done.
Okay. To look at Everdriven, we had, I guess it was towards the end of October when we first launched out our rides with about 20. And last week at this point in time, we had 46 students, and we've added from that Wednesday on now about 6 to 8 more. The number does fluctuate some with students moving and different things like that, but that's kind of where we are. But we're steadily every week adding more and more riders. In general, the service is very consistent on time. Some hiccups usually, which happens with our buses too, like when they first pick up the route, if a student lives in an apartment, which side, some things like that. A couple of times drivers have been held up in traffic, but and I have a slide where you can see kind of the communication on the screen. We do know the driver's coming, and we do still have an estimated time and that type of thing. So that's worked pretty smoothly. Right now, out of those 46 students that are riding, it's about 20 drivers that are routed for those. So there are routes to have more than one student in a car, based on the geographical area. And we have 46 other drivers that have been working through the process through our HR requirements for their background checks and all their information related to getting approved through HR and having, badges and all the appropriate stuff. And then right now, we continue to prioritize sped routes and McKinney-Vento riders, and we still have a few gen ed riders. So splitting that up out of those 46, 22 of those riders are sped, 18 are McKinney-Vento, and then 6 are general ed. And those general ed ones are some that are in really far north Frisco that have a really long route back down to the Carrollton Hebron corridor. So that's they're kind of the exception. Most of the other ones are going to be either sped or the McKinney-Vento students. Out of that, you can kind of see East Zone right now has 21, Central Zone has 13, West Zone has 4, and then we have our out-of-district McKinney-Vento, which meaning that these students live somewhere in the LISD bounds, but they go to school somewhere else. So right now, we have kids that are going to Frisco, Irving, Denton, Carrollton Farmers Branch. We have one that's been requesting a route all the way down to DeSoto. So those are ones that we have to do. And all of those that are going to another district, we do split that with the district. So we do, most of the time, we do the PM route, they do the AM route. We work with the districts on that. So we do it one way and they do it the other. So 8 of those kiddos out of that number for the McKinney-Vento are actually kids that are attending school somewhere else. And then here's kind of a screenshot of what it looks like for a student. If you can see where it has it scheduled, and it says right there, it says driver on the way to pick up, and the pickup time is 7:37. It also shows that there's already a driver scheduled for the pickup at the end of the school day at 3:35. And then underneath there, those are all the previous pickups for that, for weeks even. Green means that it was a successful route, the student was picked up. Red means the student was a no-show. Gray means it was canceled, because the parents can go in and cancel it, or we can go in and cancel if we know a student leaves early because they're ill, or, if something like that. So, and we do have a report that comes to us on the no-shows, because we do get charged for the no-shows, that they alert me saying they have 3 days in a row of no-shows. Do you want to continue? So it's been helpful, because I can follow up with the campus and say, all right, are they riding or are we dropping it? So there is some efficiency to not paying for things that we obviously aren't using.
So for special ed, we have continued to work on cleaning up transportation throughout the school year. And really bringing transportation in-house has opened our eyes to a lot of practices that have happened just as part of, you know what, we really love your child and want to take care of them. So yes, we'll transport them to Mima's house after school or to daycare or a lot of other places. So Mr. Kaj and I and my team, Jake Hampton, Christy Kroll, we have worked through and identified 90 students who are being transported to locations that are not their home. So that could be, like I said, daycare. It could be, Lisa's going to watch my kids after school. We're going to drop them off over there. And we've had a few where we are shuttling like an employee's child from one campus to another after school, which is not a typical district practice. So we are working on running those by the campus administrators for each of those campuses and beginning the communication conversations with families to say, hey, our obligation is to provide your kid safe to school and safe back home again. And so these alternative locations, we're really going to need to shore up and clean that up. We have had ABA clinics, private daycares, again, the other LISD campuses, and we just need to make sure that we are consistently delivering, because we can't shuttle, every employee's child to the location they need after school, or hey, they've got this on Thursday, so I need you to take them to Miss Prosnick's house because she's going to help them bake cookies today. And so we really want to ensure that the services we're provided, one, are meeting our requirements that we are safely delivering children to and from school so they can learn, but also that we are not straining our already limited resources in those delivery practices. So we are planning to send a letter to parents by the end of this week, notifying them that, hey, we're looking into your specific child out of those 90. Prior to the Christmas break by December 15th, our goal is to have out communications that, as we've reviewed, we've determined that we're not transporting your child to your home address. As a result, by, I believe our goal is January 20th, we are planning to discontinue transportation to the daycare. We'll transport from home to school, which is our obligation in that regard. And so hopefully by February, we have taken those 90 inefficiencies truly and have them transported from home to school. We do have about 10 who are on voluntary or out of district transfers. They may be an employee's child or just, I wanted my child to go to Prairie Trail to Valley Ridge to get STEM. And so they have inadvertently still receive that related service, and once you have a voluntary transfer, you no longer are entitled to that. So we are working to get that cleaned up so that we can help support these folks in doing the work that they do.
So looking ahead, December 6th, we have a job fair scheduled, looking to fill those those vacant spots, which it's kind of a never-ending thing. You don't just hire early in the year and you maintain them. It's going to have to be an ongoing recruitment and hiring effort, and so we're starting that this December. Also, Wayfinder. We've got a lot of Wayfinder, Stop Finder, all kinds of different finder things. The Wayfinder is, we're going to find you. The Wayfinder is the bus driver's tablet to where it has their stop-by-stop GPS directions versus having the paper copy. And so that's being loaded, and of course, with every new process is the training to ensure that it's being done correctly in fidelity with a lot of patience for some of our employees there. And then back to basics trainings, including the de-escalation training for drivers, monitor students between Karen and Ms. Clark's team of training these individuals, these employees on how to handle students in the right way with kindness and compassion while still maintaining the safety and security on the buses is important. So hire them, never stops. Training them never stops either. So that's where we're at. And then the concerns continue to be those last-minute driver call-outs. You can kind of plan for planned absences. It's those last minute ones that kind of catch us by surprise. Those continue to have those open routes. Traffic and construction, we constantly get updates from the municipalities. This road is going to be closed. This turn lane is going to be shut down. This railroad crossing is going to have some construction, so we have to be on top of that, and that causes Lisa and her team to have to reroute those routes the day of. Field trip in those times, we want to ensure that field trips are still happening, but we still need drivers to take the kids to school and pick them up. Didn't make the list, but the number of athletic events, you think the fall is busy, the spring is super busy, taking the kids all over the place to have their athletic and fine arts competitions. And then another one that we're seeing, and I think we've seen this in other areas in safety and security, is that LISD provides some of the best training, the best mentoring, the best guidance, and the best education about how to do things. They come here, they get trained, and then they leave us with our knowledge. So that's one of our concerns that we're working on. Now, once again, as we're building that capacity and we have the number of drivers that are probably a little bit more than our routes, we can absorb some of those leaves, but whenever we're staffed under our routes, it makes it difficult. So before I turn it over to questions or comments, this team right here has just been tremendous. It takes all of us to make this thing happen, from the special ed department, which is tremendous, from Karen holding down Mill Street with the special ed routes over there, with Lisa keeping all three barns together. And I know she said the operations managers were hired. Think of that as a building principal. So the Colony barn now has somebody over it. Somebody is now going to be over Purnell, and then we're working on getting an individual. Well, of course, we move somebody over Mill Street. So it takes a lot of humans to keep this thing up and running, and these are some of the three best that we have. So with that, I'll turn it over for any questions or comments.
I always appreciate the great work. Are there any comments, questions? I was going to go right because I always go left first. Anything over here? Ms. Lopez.
So just out of curiosity, how were those how did you initially find out those 90 students were being dropped off differently or in different locations?
Lots of Excel spreadsheets. So when we identified it initially, it was like an individual situation would pop up, and we would look it up and we would say, oh, this situation happened, and while we were looking into it, we're not transporting you to your home address. And so after a couple of those, we ended up cross-checking. Here's everybody who has the transportation, and then I essentially pulled their home address and did a formula to say, does it match where we're delivering them to out of our routing system? And if it didn't, those were the ones that we flagged to go dive into and see, are we? And so this week, our goal is to really shore up and make sure that what we have in both systems is accurate and they didn't move somewhere and it just is missing.
And on top of communicating with the parents and the families to shore up those drop-offs, are we putting anything else in place to make sure that that doesn't continue?
Yes. So I met with our campus diagnostician team just prior to the break. We did some retraining back in September and October just to say, we need to be very intentional. It's special ed transportation is a related service and you have to have a need for it. But we also are looking at, prior to making those related service eligibility decisions, that's being discussed with the special ed director that supports that campus, and we're being very intentional in ensuring that we have the data to support those decisions and that we are transporting from home to school and school to home. Thank you.
Ms. Lasan.
Yes, thank you all so much. Yes, and the Stop Finder app, like when I open it, it's got this big red stop sign, so you cannot miss it on your phone. And since Bantober is over, we are back riding the bus home, so yes. Which, by the way, and I can't remember if I said this at the last meeting, like publicly, but I did hear from some of my band parent chaperone people that our bus drivers are fantastic, and our directors were saying that the ones that drove the field trips, they were so reliable, they did a great job, so, you know, kudos to those people. I had an idea, all of us, you know, kind of like to be on social media sometimes, and so, you know, if y'all put out something about the job fair, I think we would all share it out, you know, on our pages and stuff and make people aware, you know, for that. And the last little comment I have is, you know, I hate to say this, I know I don't hate to say this, I really am glad that we have brought this in-house, because not only the 90 people that you guys have identified, but just all the issues that y'all have identified with regarding the maintenance of our equipment and just various different things. I mean, I don't know, it's just, I know it's been somewhat of a nightmare the last few months, but I think once all this we're finding all these problems now, that once we fix them, we'll be better. So, you know, God bless you for, you know, going through all this. Y'all are great, so we appreciate it.
So I just have a couple of quick questions. So, and as I always say, I'm the best trustee in the world to find something that's illegal that we can't do, which is there a way when we sign the contracts with these people that if they leave us within a certain amount of time, they need to pay us back for the training?
We have, those two over there and those two are the ones that will guide us on this from HR to legal. So, you know, depends on who you ask over here. You might get a different answer than what those two might provide, just saying.
I just know if there's a way to sign, when you sign on with a contract with us, that you have to like stay with us for a minimum of so long, or you have to pay back for that training, because I'm so happy that we're training all the bus drivers for all of North Texas, but I don't like them doing it on the LISD taxpayer dime. So that's just, you know, work on that. And then kind of along the same lines, for those absences, for those last-minute call-outs, are we tracking who is doing that so we don't have what I like to call habitual people who are doing that?
Yes, I've started taking data on that, because we do have some habitual offenders that do call out on Fridays, but then they'll try to do field trips on Saturday and Sundays, but that's why we're putting in those SOPs to prevent that from happening. And then, once we identify who those individuals are, it's a sit-down, and it's a warning in the beginning, and then so on and so on. But yes.
I'm very happy to hear about the standard operating procedures.
Yes.
I think those are so important. I personally think it's just transparent across the board for anybody who comes on board, and I think it standardizes our system. And to Ms. Lasan's point, that's why we do things well here, and if we can standardize it, I think that we can make it better, and we can build a culture where people don't necessarily want to leave and go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
So I echo the board's gratitude for the work on this. I echo Ms. Lasan's comments that I am also grateful that we brought this in-house, and I'm grateful that we had you all to do it. So thank you very much. You're dismissed. Moving on, Legal Services Report, Ms. Bay, where she chastises me for my question and gives us a board policy update on 126.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Rapp. We are working on that. Okay. However, I announced it before you to talk about Board Policy Update 126. As you guys know, I periodically come before you with updated policies. This one is to date our largest policy change we have ever done. The changes are meant to bring our policies into compliance with the 89th legislative session. Of course, we've already been following those laws, but we have a little bit of a lag when it comes to updating our policy because it takes a while for those to get written. Any policy changes about special session will be coming later. Policies have been reviewed by their leadership team member as well as the board policy committee. In your board book, you have track changes of any of those policies, so you can see those per your board operating procedures. Tonight is just a first read. We'll be asking for action at the December 8th meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Dr. Barker, do you want to speak to the policy committee?
I can. So we reviewed numerous policies over the course of 2 meetings. It was too many for just one. But we had a rousing time. I will say that one of the policies that had the most discussion, can you remind me of our numbers and letters for our policies we're getting options for?
Oh, CH,
Yeah, that's
that'll be
separate.
next.
That's a separate item tonight.
Okay, well then I
This
won't
is just for
discuss it.
126.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
A lot of policy work.
A lot of policy work.
Are there any questions in regards to update 126? All right, you're excused for now. You'll be back. Next up is the finance report. Mr. Rare. Oh, you're just going to make Randy, you're not going to come up, sit at the big table? Okay. How you doing, Mr. Fate?
Okay. Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Rapp, and the board. So just have a couple of quick items tonight. This is for the 2023 bond program. Our first item here is the second sale McAuliffe Elementary School renovations, GMP. So on this project, Stantec is our architect and Joris is the CMAR. Joris advertised and bid this project out per Chapter 2269 of the Government Code. Joris has evaluated and scoped their bids and provided a GMP to the district. That GMP is $1,352,903. This does take our project over budget by about $385,000. So the main reasons for this really are the casework. So McAuliffe is a very unique campus. It's not a kind of a typical standard. We do have a typical standard casework that we're going back in with in our classrooms. And so that being the case, it's not a true one-for-one replacement. We're also getting into a little bit more tack wall and drywall and paint needs than if we were just taking some cabinets out and putting some cabinets back in. There's also some plumbing associated with that casework and some electrical as well. There was some additional flooring that was identified in need of replacement that was not really listed in the original assessment or document, but those are in some offices and music rooms. But we were able to capture that. It's not a huge price tag. I think most of the changes here, most of the overage here was really due to the casework. So our recommendation to approve this GMP will be presented next Monday night. Additional funds needed we would suggest that they come from 2023 bond interest earnings. Work for this renovation is set to take place in summer of 2026. And my second project tonight is the second sale year 2 flooring replacements GMP. So on this one, Stantec again is the architect and Joris again is the CMAR. Again, it was advertised and bid out, and they have developed a GMP of $406,734. This GMP is within the overall project budget, which is great. A recommendation to approve this GMP will be presented to the board as a consent item for approval on December 8th, and work for this renovation is set to take place summer 2026. So our next steps for the 2023 and 2024 bonds, since I didn't have a separate presentation. In January, our potential discussion items, we've got 4 GMPs here: Cowdy Ridge, Hicks, Rockbrook, and Vickery Elementary, all 20-year life cycle maintenance and repair projects. As I mentioned before, we're trying to get a little bit ahead of the curve. Instead of taking these in the spring, we're trying to get earlier and earlier, which helps out with material lead times and things. And then on the 2024 bond side, we have the Hebron High School Fieldhouse 20-year life cycle maintenance and repair GMP, the Marcus Baseball Locker Room Addition GMP, and the Flower Mound High School Baseball Softball Locker Room GMP. So our next steps for January consent items for the 2023 bond are all those GMPs that I just mentioned, as well as the final completion of the year one elevator replacements project. And for 2024 bond, again, all the GMPs that I mentioned just a moment ago, as well as we are planning on bringing a final completion for that stadium scoreboard project. Again, we're still working on the light lettering issue. If all that gets resolved, then we'll certainly bring this. We want to get it on as a potential item at this point. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? You got out of here scot-free.
Very quick, thank you.
Have a good evening, Randy. Next is the December regular board meeting consent agenda preview. Oh, now he comes.
Good evening. I'm not used to making that long walk over here.
Are you tired?
A little bit. Might need some water.
There's some water waiting for you when you get back.
Thank you. So on page 136 of your board book is the consent agenda preview for December. We've highlighted 3 items on there. Tonight I just want to highlight one of those items, which is the RFP for the Employee Benefits Third-Party Administrator. So we're currently in the final year of a 5-year term that ends on June 30th of 2026. And so this bid was issued to contract with a third-party administrator for our voluntary employee benefit program. And so included in that program would be vision, dental, critical illness, voluntary life insurance, just to name a few. If awarded, the initial term would begin on July 1st of 2026 and go through June 30th of 2027 with the option of 4 one-year extensions.
Anything else?
That's all for that.
Thank you so much for coming. Wow. We've got you again. Are you going to stay for board policy CH local?
Yes, I will.
You going to bring a friend?
I do have a friend.
It's always good to bring an attorney.
Yes. So, all right, so just, we've gone over this in November, but just to provide some further context. So the purchasing threshold established in law has been increased from $50,000 to $100,000. The district last increased the purchasing threshold from $20,000 to $50,000 in June of 2016. Board policy CH Local was updated in May 2019, but it did not change the purchasing threshold. And so in a review of our procurement agenda items from November of 2024 to October of 2025, 68% of the items that were presented were for over $100,000. And so, as I mentioned last month, so Senate Bill 1173 in the 89th legislative session is looking to streamline purchasing. And so it would amend the Texas Education Code, the local government code, to increase the competitive bidding threshold from $50,000 to $100,000. In addition, Gibson Consulting did an audit of the procurement and contract department, and one of their findings was they mentioned that the purchasing threshold for board approval is not aligned with procurement risk in the district. The effort required for district staff to create documents for approval is significant. And so their recommendation was to increase the threshold related to purchases that require board approval. So last month you'd asked me to provide some options to the board, and so tonight we have 3 different options to take a look at. So the first one would increase the purchasing threshold to $100,000 for all purchases. At this threshold, this would have reduced 24 agenda items that would have come to the board between November 2024 and October 2025. Discussing with Craig Martin and his working with staff, he estimated that each agenda item would require about 8 hours of staff time. So the 24 agenda items would be about just under 200 staff hours. And so you'll see the breakdown of what those agenda items were. The majority of them are for renewals or cooperative purchases. Option number 2 would increase the purchasing threshold to $75,000. That would have been a reduction of 19 agenda items. And once again, most of those are renewals and cooperatives. And then option 3 would be a blend of those two. It'd be increasing the purchasing threshold to $75,000 for new purchasing initiatives and $100,000 for renewals and cooperative purchases. So doing that would have been a reduction of 22 agenda items during that time. So taking a look at some surrounding districts and what their threshold is right now, most have either been at 100,000 or have increased it recently to 100,000. Denton is at 150,000. Frisco is currently at 50,000, but you'll see they have a lot of exceptions. So basically anything that there was a competitive bid or it was a cooperative purchase or an interlocal agreement, those don't require board approval regardless of the amount. So they may have 50, but there's a lot fewer that they'd actually take to the board. So in addition to talking about the purchasing threshold, we thought this would be a good opportunity to discuss the consent agenda preview and what the purpose was behind it and maybe what a recommendation could be going forward. And so the consent agenda preview was started in June of 2022. And the main reason behind it was due to the large volume of consent agenda items that would help just kind of provide a brief summary of each item for the board to provide more information to the board for any questions that may come up leading up to the regular board meeting. And so when we look at cooperative purchases, the district is currently in over 30 eligible purchasing cooperatives, and those cooperatives help increase efficiency for the department. We don't have to bid out as much, and so, right now, as I mentioned, we're taking each of those items as a separate agenda item. And so, in September 2025, we had 11 items that were cooperative purchases. In October, we had 8 items. Many other districts that we've looked at, they summarize all their cooperative purchases into one agenda item and then ask for the board's approval for that one agenda item. So a recommendation for the consent agenda preview would be to discontinue presenting separate agenda items for each cooperative purchase. Those are bid out by the cooperative that we're in. Those items would already be included in the approved budget. But what we would do, instead of where we now do a brief summary of just selected items on the consent agenda, we would provide a summary of every single cooperative item that would meet the threshold. And so that's what would then be on the consent agenda preview. So that would allow the board to have time to see that the week prior to bringing it back for approval in case there were questions. And then when we came back for the regular meeting, we would present all cooperative purchases in just one agenda item, and we would put it like in a table form that would show all the information that the board would need. And so next steps that we'd be looking at is we would need feedback from the board on which of the options that they would want to go with for increasing the purchasing threshold for board policy CH local, and then bringing that back for approval at the December 8th meeting. We would want to align the recommended purchasing threshold in board policy CV local, which we'll discuss next, and align that for the approval on December 8th as well. And then change the current format of the consent agenda preview to include a brief summary of each of the cooperative purchases, and then include one agenda item at the regular board meeting for the approval of all cooperative purchases. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or.
I'm going to kick it to the chair of the policy committee.
I got so excited because I was supposed to be speaking for Ms. Sells, who could not be with us. And so I was like, I had it pulled up, I was ready to go, and then realized, no, not yet. So at this time, I will be speaking for Ms. Sells on this particular topic. As a board, we frequently refer to time as a critical commodity for our employees, particularly our teachers, and I believe that commitment to valuing time should extend to all staff across the district. Streamlined processes are not about reducing oversight. Rather, they are a way to ensure that our organizational energy is focused where it matters most. Research on public sector workflow efficiency consistently shows that simplifying administrative steps can reduce turnaround times, improve staff productivity, and free leaders to concentrate on higher impact decision making. In many districts, thoughtful adjustments to approval thresholds have resulted in faster procurement cycles without compromising accountability or transparency. Efficiency measures, when designed well, strengthen an organization's capacity rather than diminish the authority of those entrusted with governance. For these reasons, I, Catherine Sells, am supportive of updating this policy to better align with our priorities and to respect the time and expertise of our employees while maintaining board authority over new contracts with continuing contracts at a higher threshold.
Ta-da.
Ta-da, that's from Ms. Sells. I will add, as the policy chair, this is where we had rousing conversation around these policies, and maybe it's the Episcopalian in me, but I like a via media. I like a compromise and a middle way, if you shall. So my personal preference would be for option 3. So we have 2 separate pathways, one for new contracts, one for existing, and we maintain a lower threshold for those things that are coming before us anew, and a higher threshold for those that we have approved in the past.
All right, so everyone else gets to kind of weigh in.
I'll weigh in.
Dr. Taylor.
It should be no surprise, probably not to Scott for sure as an accountant. This is standard procedure for every place I've ever been where there's a number, and anything that number or lower, you trust your staff to make those decisions, especially if it's budgeted, because if it's budgeted, it's already budgeted, it's there. So it's not like they're approving anything new. My understanding is anything new would still be brought before the board. I'm in support of the 100,000 with no compromise.
Option 1.
Option 1.
Option 1. Ms. Lassonde?
So Ms. Sells we're the audit committee, and we've been reviewing Michelle's on it as well. And so we discussed this as a committee, and the 3 of us, we discussed it with Scott, and we agreed that the 100,000. I'm not speaking for Michelle. She may have something else to say now, but that ditto what Catherine said through her very eloquent thing there. A couple of thoughts. I'll harken back to when I used to work for the town of Flower Mound and preparing budget, preparing agenda items. It's very lengthy, especially for something that, has already been approved in the budget. So, we have technically already approved it, as a board. And so, you've laid out there how long it takes. One thing I think that maybe you didn't put in there is, we have made, Dr. Rapp has made significant cuts to central office, including this department, I'm assuming. And so, you're working with fewer people now. Is that correct? You want to jump in on anything regarding that?
No, that's correct. Yeah, no, they've had a reduction of a few FTEs, but even more than that, it's just the turnover in staff in general. So I looked back in 2024, there's probably 7 FTEs that work on board agenda items, and 6 of those have left since 2024.
Okay, yeah.
So there's been a lot of turnover.
So anything we can do to be more efficient, I think is fine. And then the other thing that, I noticed in here too is, we're talking about, I guess the last change to this amount was made in 2016. And so I don't know, you accountants here, maybe I'll just put you on the spot and say how much has inflation increased since 2016? I mean, exponentially. So, quite a bit. So what in 2016, we were paying $50,000 for, is, very different. We're talking almost 10 years ago now. So, all that to say, I am for the first option of, the $100,000. And again, same thing. I love what you said, Dr. Taylor, about, putting trust in your staff, that to do the right thing. And, and as far as, and then sort of as a separate item, right, with the cooperative purchases and the consent agenda preview, I do like the idea of kind of combining the cooperative purchases, because again, that's the whole point of a cooperative purchase, is to make life easier for everybody. So, listing those out for us is good, but, yeah, I think that's all, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Lopez?
I was going to say the same thing about inflation. I saw 2016 and I thought I was still in high school. So I know. No, I don't mean to make everybody feel old at the table. So yeah, that was my first thought. And I think, yes, we respect our staff's time. We respect your capabilities. And so I too am in support of option 1.
Ms. Alcatel.
I mean, my response is going to be ditto. We sat in the same committee meeting when we discussed this, when we were originally presented it by Scott and his team. And definitely with the staff reduction, the turnover, the capabilities, and I mean, you laid it out by hours, which I really do appreciate, because then that really puts it into perspective, the amount of time, because that was one of the big questions that we have is, can you tell us like about how much time this is taking your staff that's already been reduced, that's already having those turnover issues, and we're looking for that efficiency piece. And so I'm definitely in favor of option 1. I trust the staff, I trust you and the capabilities, because as Ms. Lasan said, you know, we discussed it, it has already been approved in the budget. We've already approved it as a board, so I feel we're still being presented the information, you're still giving it to us in summary, we can still ask our questions, but I think that I definitely agree with option 1.
To no one's surprise, I don't. Because this has to mirror CV local as well. And CV local is where, as a board, we have found errors. And when you raise that bar, you raise the opportunity for more errors. And so that's why I am not in favor. I realize I'm in a minority on the board, and I will acquiesce to the board, but I would ask my fellow board members if they're comfortable then, because CV local also then raises. It's not just CH. I was in favor of the compromise for the $75,000 threshold because we're still making sure that big expenses are open for the public to see. It's not just about for us to see, it's about the public and public trust and transparency. It's not about not trusting staff. It is about having public transparency. One of the items that was on the preview agenda was $50,000 for car rentals. Well, as a board member, if that's not, and it would still fall under the $75,000, but right now it's in the $50,000 range, so that I can look and see, should we be purchasing a vehicle instead of renting a vehicle? But now that's not even going to be on any agenda, as this policy will be standing. And I just want to make that clear, because this is my opportunity to say why I'm opposed to this. Because what we do for CH is what we have to do for CV. And I will just remind you that we could have been in a really tough situation if we didn't have more eyes looking at things on this board. With that, the board has said that they prefer option 1, which is the $100,000, and we will vote on that in December. And CV local, do you want to speak to that, other than it has to mirror?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's just talking about the construction contracts.
So those would also be raised, correct?
Yes, and this is the first reading of this, and that we would be bringing it back on December 8th.
Very good. Thank you both. Next up's the technology report. Mr. Garicani.
Oh, boy.
No, Mr. Garicani earlier tonight told me how long he was going to take. So on your mark,
At least 3
get
hours.
set,
No, I'm just kidding.
go.
Good evening, President Prosnick, Dr. Rapp, and Board. It's my pleasure to bring these items to you. As you know, we've been doing the work within the 2023 bond, and we have a number of technology projects. The first is now the second sale of Classroom AV Refresh Project. This will be the engineering item, which you will see next week in your consent agenda, step 1. And then step 2, we'll have to choose a construction delivery. And then step 3 for products and services will follow at a future board meeting. And then we have the cybersecurity upgrades, which we discussed in closed session last time we met, but this also was presented at the work session in October. Nothing really new here. One item to note for this agenda item is that we'll be bringing a recommendation to approve a 3-year initial term with 2 one-year extensions for a total of 5 years. The goal of that activity is to help ensure we lock in pricing for a period of 5 years. In addition to that, we minimize risk to the district, so if we change our mind, want to go in a different direction, then we can do so at the end of year 3. And then finally, the Apple residual value, which many of you I'm sure are very familiar with. This is where the district takes Apple products, which tend to have a great resale value even after they've reached their end-of-life status. And this is a critical component of our lifecycle management strategy with respect to devices. So we'll be bringing that to you for next Monday night as well. As you know, there's no dollar amount associated with this yet until we get the devices sold off, although we do have a guaranteed minimum that will be a part of the board book. The district's been leveraging this strategy for quite some time, and since 2018, for a total of $7.9 million in the resale of the district's technology, which is great because that goes back into our efforts with devices. And so next steps, as I mentioned, all 3 items will come into consent. I know I'm getting close to, she's looking at the time clock that she's got there. We do have some January discussion items coming up, and that is the second sale, which will then be the project construction delivery method that I spoke of earlier, the engineering project for stadium press box sound refresh, and then the second sale cybersecurity upgrades, which will be focused on content filtering, not to be confused with the other cybersecurity suite of tools that will be in your consent agenda for next Monday night. And then this is January consent proposed, second sale classroom AV project construction delivery method, second sale engineering for stadium press box sound refresh. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is this for all the stadiums?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank God.
Do you want to know your time?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, maybe I do. That way I can make sure the next time I don't, shoot myself in the foot with the 122nd.
2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay. All right. Well, following the CH local thing kind of threw me off. Any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions? No, we're
All
good.
right.
Thank you so much.
I think I have just that next item, which is just the residual products.
Yeah, which you already
residual value.
talked
so.
about. You're
All
good.
right. Thank y'all very much.
Next up is the Board of Trustees reports for board committee updates. I know, Dr. Taylor, you have an update.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. So the audit committee, made up of myself, Dr. Barker, and Ms. Sells. Ms. Sells obviously was absent. She's in Scotland, which was much better than where we were. But we had a meeting today, right before this board meeting, with our audit firm, and they went over the preliminary audit results with us, which is an unmodified opinion, but they still have a little bit of work to do. They have said that they will get that audit report to the board this week, sometime later this week, for you to have a chance to review it before they present the final report at next Monday's meeting. So once you get that information, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Did I miss anything, Dr. Parker?
I'll just say, we were very happy to hear that our tax values had been corrected. That's
Correct.
going, and the
Yes.
fact that we got it today means that they'll be able to include that in our
Correct.
audit.
Yes.
And this is the outside audit firm from Whitley Penn
Whitley Penn, yes.
that we have. It's not like an internal, it's an outside
Yes.
audit.
External audit.
I know the naming committee is getting ready to do all kinds of work. We'll look for the Allison Lasan building coming to your town soon. And then I will say that the program and budget committee met. It's always such a fun meeting to start looking at next year's budget and where we sit, and the decisions that, of course, that we make today will affect what we can do next year. So because the legislature provided no change in funding or in teacher compensation for the 2 years after their session. So we will be getting no new money from the state for next year, which is kind of something we had seen in the past. We're not seeing that for next year. So that is something that committee's looking at so that we can bring forward to the whole board for the budget. The next item is an action item. It was listed on the agenda as a placeholder, and no board action is needing, but Dr. Rapp, did you want to share any information?
Yes, Madam President, thank you so much. Board, we are applying for some of the learning acceleration support opportunities with TEA, and while the ones that we're applying for do not require board action, I listed those in your board document for you to have. The Leadership and Instructional Foundations for Texas and School Improvement PLC support, that's known as LIFT. That will help us to deliver high-quality learning experiences for students. Applicants have to commit to selecting and implementing SBOE-approved high-quality instructional materials. The AP Computer Science Principles is an opportunity to help fund offering that principles class, which could help us with CTE Computer Science pathway. The School Improvement and Curriculum and Instruction Support Grants, those are focused on strengthening curriculum by implementing non-bluebonnet high-quality instructional materials, which we know we have some of those. We anticipate getting on the high-quality instructional materials list. The PrEP Education and Training Grants, which would help us with recruitment and retention of staff and various partnerships to be able to do residency programs, grow your own, and mentorship programs as well. The Virtual and Hybrid Program Accelerator could help with implementing options under Senate Bill 569. So more to come about how we could expand virtual learning for our students. So we're seeking these grant opportunities. We don't know if we will ultimately be awarded any of them. I appreciate the staff from multiple departments gathering up to be able to apply for the opportunities, and we'll keep you posted when we find out something.
Do we know when we would know? As the person in the Program and Budget Committee review?
Yeah, I need to include that in my follow-up notes for you all on when we would when we anticipate hearing on these. Yes, thank you for letting me follow up on that.
All right, if there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned, and the time is 7:35 p.m. Have a pleasant evening. It is still 2